The space station called Harmony Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was a massive structure, built by many species who had come together to fight a common enemy. Ships from 100 different worlds docked at its ports every day. Warriors, diplomats, and traders walked its long hallways. It was a place of hope in a galaxy full of fear. David Cole stood at the observation window and watched another ship arrive. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and short dark hair. His face was calm, but his eyes told a different story. They were the eyes of someone who had seen too much death. He was 34 years old, but he felt much older. He had arrived on the station 3 days ago as part of Earth's first warrior exchange program. The Galactic Coalition wanted to see what humans could do. Many species doubted that humans belonged among the stars. They thought humans were too young, too weak, and too primitive to fight in a real war. David did not care what they thought. He had not come here to prove anything. He had come because the Void Swarm was spreading across the galaxy, destroying everything in its path. He had seen what they could do. He had survived what they could do, and he would fight them until his last breath. "You look like you are thinking deep thoughts," said a voice behind him. David turned to see Marcus Webb walking toward him. Marcus was his best friend and fellow soldier. They had trained together, fought together, and nearly died together more times than David could count. Marcus had a quick smile and an easy way with words. He was everything David was not. "Just watching the ships," David said. "The big meeting is in 1 hour," Marcus said. "Admiral Thorne wants us there early. She says it is important that we make a good impression." David nodded. He did not care about impressions, but he respected Admiral Thorne. She was a good leader and a smart woman. If she wanted him at the meeting, he would be there. The assembly hall was enormous. It could hold thousands of beings from dozens of species. Today, it held the military leaders of the coalition. They had gathered to plan the assault on a Void Swarm hive world. It was going to be the biggest attack in the history of the war. David stood with the human delegation near the back of the room. He watched the alien commanders talk and argue. Some of them were huge creatures with armored skin. Others were small and delicate, with large eyes that seemed to see everything. Each species was different, but they all had one thing in common. They all looked at the humans with doubt in their eyes. One group stood apart from the others. They were the Seraphini, an ancient race of warriors. Their skin was silver, and they were tall and graceful. They had powerful psychic abilities and a proud military tradition that stretched back thousands of years. They believed they were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Many species agreed with them. Their commander was a woman named Elena Voss. She was beautiful in a cold and distant way. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders, and her eyes were pale blue like winter ice. She carried herself like a queen, and others moved out of her way when she walked. The meeting began with reports about the Void Swarm. The hive world was well defended. The attack would be difficult and costly. Many warriors would die. But if they could destroy the planetary shields, the fleet could bombard the surface and end the threat forever. "We need ground forces to disable the shields," said the Coalition Admiral. "Volunteers from every species will form the assault teams." This was when Elena Voss spoke. Her voice was clear and carried across the entire hall. "I have reviewed the combat records of all the species represented here," she said. "I must question why humans have been included in this mission." The room grew quiet. Everyone turned to look at the human delegation. Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Humans are newcomers to our galaxy. They have been among the stars for less than 200 years. They are fragile creatures with soft bones and short lives. They have no psychic abilities. They have no natural weapons. They are, to be honest, prey animals who have somehow learned to build ships." Some aliens in the crowd laughed. Others nodded in agreement. Elena continued. I see that one of their warriors is here today. David Cole, I believe. I have read his record. He fought in some small battles on the edge of human space. This is supposed to impress us?" She laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. "The Seraphine have fought wars for 10,000 years. We have conquered empires and destroyed fleets. And the Coalition expects us to fight alongside humans? These soft-boned prey animals playing at war." The laughter spread through the hall. Even some who did not laugh were smiling. The human delegation stood in silence. Admiral Thorne's face was like stone. Marcus was clenching his fists, ready to defend his friend. Everyone waited to see what David would do. David looked at Elena Voss. He looked at the aliens who were laughing at him and his species. He saw the doubt and mockery in their eyes. He had seen such looks before. He had heard such words before. He felt nothing. Words were just sounds. They could not hurt him. They could not change who he was or what he had done. They were meaningless noise from people who did not know him and did not matter to him. David closed his datapad. He stood up slowly. The room fell silent, waiting for his response. Waiting for him to shout or argue or defend himself. He did none of those things. Instead, he gave a single respectful nod to the room. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silence. He did not look back. He did not say a single word. The door closed behind him. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Elena Voss laughed again. "It seems the human has nothing to say," she said. "Perhaps he knows his place after all. Perhaps he has gone back to his ship to hide." The laughter returned, louder than before. Marcus started to move forward, his face red with anger. But Admiral Thorne grabbed his arm and held him back. "Let them laugh," she said quietly. "They will learn the truth soon enough. How can you just let them say those things?" Marcus demanded. Admiral Thorne looked at the door where David had disappeared. There was something strange in her eyes. It might have been pride. "David Cole survived the Kepler IV massacre," she said. "He watched 10,000 people die. He was one of 12 who lived. He has walked through hell and come out the other side. Do you really think the words of some arrogant alien can hurt him?" She shook her head slowly. "That man does not need to prove anything with words. When the time comes, he will prove everything with actions. And on that day, Elena Voss will understand what humans really are. She will understand what it means to have a warrior who feels no need to boast, no need to threaten, no need to respond to insults." Admiral Thorne smiled, and it was not a kind smile. She will understand when it is far too late. Outside the assembly hall, David Cole walked alone through the quiet corridors of the space station. His face showed nothing. His steps were steady and calm. But deep inside, in a place he rarely visited, he made a silent promise. When the battle came, he would show them all. Not with words, with blood. The days after the meeting were difficult for the human delegation. News of what happened in the assembly hall spread quickly across the station. Everyone was talking about the human warrior who had run away from words. They called David Cole a coward. They said humans were even weaker than they had thought. David heard the whispers wherever he went. Aliens would stop talking when he walked past them. Some would laugh openly. Others would shake their heads with pity in their eyes. A few even blocked his path, waiting to see if he would react. He never did. David continued his duties like nothing had happened. He attended briefings. He studied mission reports. He trained every day in the combat rooms. And through it all, he said almost nothing. Marcus found this silence difficult to accept. He was angry on his friend's behalf. Every insult he heard made his blood boil. He wanted to fight. He wanted to show these aliens what humans could do. "How can you just ignore them?" Marcus asked one night. "They think we are nothing. They think you are nothing. David was cleaning his rifle. His hands moved with practiced skill. Let them think what they want. But it is not fair. You are the best soldier I know. You have done things that would make any of them cry in fear. And they call you a coward? Words are wind, David said. They blow past and leave nothing behind. Only actions matter. Only the battlefield tells the truth. Marcus shook his head. I do not understand how you can be so calm. David did not answer. He finished cleaning his rifle and put it away. Then he stood up and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Marcus asked. Training room. It is the middle of the night. I know. David trained alone in the empty combat room. The lights were dim, and the only sound was his breathing and the impact of his fists against the training targets. He moved through fighting forms he had learned long ago. Every strike was precise. Every movement was efficient. There was no wasted energy, no flashy techniques. Just pure, deadly skill. He did not know that someone was watching him. Elena Vos stood on the observation deck above the training room. She had come to prepare for her own training session, but she had stopped when she saw the human below. She had expected to see something pathetic, a weak creature pretending to be a warrior. Instead, she saw something that made her uncomfortable. The human moved like a predator. His techniques were simple but devastating. Each strike would kill or cripple an enemy. There was no beauty in his fighting, no art or style. There was only efficiency, only death. Elena had trained warriors for centuries. She knew skill when she saw it, and what she saw in the human disturbed her more than she wanted to admit. She watched for nearly an hour. The human never slowed down. He never took a break. He pushed his body beyond what should have been possible for his fragile species. Sweat soaked his clothes, and his muscles trembled with exhaustion. But he did not stop. Finally, Elena turned and walked away. She told herself that it meant nothing. One skilled human did not change the fact that his species was weak. But as she walked back to her quarters, she could not shake the image of those cold, empty eyes. The next day, a young alien approached David in the mess hall. Her name was Riva, and she was from a species that David did not recognize. She was small, with green skin and large, curious eyes. Unlike the others, she did not look at him with mockery or contempt. May I sit with you? She asked. David nodded. Riva sat across from him and studied his face. Everyone is talking about you. They say you are a coward who ran from words. I know what they say. Is it true? David looked at her. What do you think? Riva tilted her head. I think there is more to you than others see. I watched you training last night. You move like someone who has killed many enemies. Cowards do not move like that. David said nothing. So why did you not defend yourself? Riva asked. Why did you just walk away? For a long moment, David was silent. Then he spoke, and his voice was quiet but steady. Where I come from, we have a saying. Words are wind. They cannot hurt you unless you let them. The battlefield speaks the only truth that matters. Everything else is noise. Riva thought about this. But does it not bother you? The things they say? No. Why not? David looked down at his food. His eyes grew distant, like he was seeing something far away. Something terrible. Because I have seen real pain. I have seen real loss. I have watched everyone I cared about die while I could do nothing to save them. After that, words have no power. They are just sounds. Empty and meaningless. Riva was quiet for a long time. Then she stood up. I think I understand now, she said. You are not weak. You are just tired of proving yourself to people who do not matter. David looked up at her. For just a moment, something like appreciation flickered in his eyes. Yes, he said. That is exactly right. That evening, Admiral Thorne called a meeting of the human delegation. Her face was serious, and David knew immediately that something was wrong. "We have new intelligence," she said. "The Void Swarm Hive world is more heavily defended than we thought. The orbital defenses are 3 times stronger than our estimates. The assault will be extremely dangerous." She paused. "Command needs ground forces to disable the planetary shields. Without those shields down, the fleet cannot bombard the surface. This mission will be difficult. Many will not come back." "Who is volunteering?" Marcus asked. "Elena Voss and her Seraphine squad have already volunteered. It is considered a great honor among their people." Admiral Thorne looked at David. "Coalition Command has asked if any humans would like to join the assault teams. I told them I would ask my best soldier." David did not hesitate. "I volunteer." Marcus grabbed his arm. "David, this is practically a suicide mission. You have nothing to prove to these people." "I am not doing this to prove anything," David said. "I am doing this because it needs to be done. Because if those shields do not come down, millions will die." Admiral Thorne nodded slowly. "I will inform command." The news spread quickly. When Elena Voss heard that the human warrior had volunteered for her mission, she was furious. She went directly to the coalition admiral and demanded that his request be denied. "He will slow us down," she argued. "He will get my warriors killed. Humans are not capable of this kind of combat." The admiral was an old creature with many eyes and a patient voice. "The human has excellent combat scores. His application has been approved. This is madness. I refuse to be responsible for his death." "Then do not be responsible for it. Let him be responsible for himself." Elena stormed out of the admiral's office. She found David in the corridor outside. He was waiting for her, his face calm and expressionless. "You think you are brave for volunteering," Elena said. "But you are just foolish. You will die on that planet, human, and no one will remember your name." David looked at her with those cold, empty eyes. "Maybe," he said, "but I will die doing something that matters." "Can you say the same?" For once, Elena had no response. She watched as David walked away, his footsteps echoing in the silent corridor. And for the first time, she felt something she had not felt in centuries. In his quarters that night, David sat alone in the darkness. He looked at a small photograph he kept hidden in his personal effects. It showed a group of smiling people standing in front of a colony building. Men, women, and children. Friends and family. All of them were dead now. Killed on Kepler-4 when the Void Swarm came, David was one of 12 survivors out of 10,000 colonists. He had fought for 3 days without sleep, trying to save as many people as he could. In the end, it was not enough. It was never enough. He put the photograph away and closed his eyes. He was not afraid of dying. He had expected to die for years now. Every day since Kepler-4 had been borrowed time. Every breath was a gift he did not deserve. Tomorrow he would drop onto a hostile planet with aliens who hated him. He would fight creatures that wanted to consume everything he loved. And he would probably not survive, but maybe, just maybe, he could do some good before the end. That was enough. That was all he had ever wanted. The assault carrier Retribution moved through space like a predator hunting its prey. It carried 500 warriors from a dozen different species. All of them were volunteers. All of them knew they might not come back. David sat alone in the cargo bay, checking his weapons and armor. Around him, alien warriors prepared for battle in their own ways. Some meditated. Some prayed to gods David had never heard of. Some talked and laughed with their friends, pretending they were not afraid. The Seraphine squad sat on the other side of the bay. There were 30 of them, all elite warriors with centuries of combat experience. They moved with grace and confidence. Their silver skin glowed softly in the dim light of the ship. Elena Vos stood at their center, giving final instructions. She did not look at David. She had not spoken to him since their encounter in the corridor. But David could feel her attention. She was watching him, waiting for him to fail. Marcus had tried to volunteer for the mission, but Admiral Thorne had refused. The humans could not afford to lose both of their best soldiers. So Marcus had stayed behind on Harmony Prime, angry and worried. "Come back alive," he had said when David boarded the transport. "I will try," David had answered. It was the only promise he could make. Now the planet was growing larger in the viewports. It was an ugly world, covered in void swarm structures that looked like giant organic tumors. The atmosphere was toxic, filled with gases that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. The surface crawled with millions of hostile creatures. The assault alarm sounded. "All teams to drop pods," announced a voice over the speakers. "Launch in 5 minutes." David stood and walked to his assigned pod. It was a small metal capsule designed to survive atmospheric entry. Once it hit the ground, it would open, and he would have to fight his way to the objective. Simple in theory, deadly in practice. As he passed the Seraphine squad, one of the warriors stepped into his path. He was tall even for his species, with cold eyes and a cruel smile. "He-men," he said, "try not to die too quickly. We would hate to waste a pod on you." The other Seraphine laughed. David looked at the warrior for a moment. Then he walked around him without a word and continued to his pod. Behind him, he heard Elena's voice. "Leave him alone, Kale. He's not worth your attention." David climbed into his pod and sealed the hatch. The metal walls closed around him like a coffin. He took a deep breath and waited. The countdown began. 10 seconds. 9. 8. David closed his eyes and thought of Kepler. 4. He thought of the people he had failed to save. He thought of the promise he had made to himself in the darkness of that ruined colony. Never again. Never again would he stand by while innocents died. Never again would he be too weak to protect those who needed him. 3, 2, 1. The pod launched. David was pressed against the wall by the force of acceleration. Through the tiny viewport, he could see hundreds of other pods falling toward the planet. They looked like meteors raining down from the sky. Then the anti-air defenses opened fire. The sky lit up with explosions. Pods disappeared in balls of flame. David watched as warriors he had never known were killed in an instant. The defenses were far stronger than anyone had predicted. This was not an assault. This was a massacre. His pod shook violently as explosions erupted nearby. Alarms screamed in his ears. The heat inside the capsule became unbearable. David gripped the handles and held on, knowing there was nothing he could do but survive. The impact came hard and sudden. Everything went black. When David opened his eyes, he was lying in the wreckage of his pod. The hatch had been torn open by the crash. Toxic air was seeping inside. He quickly sealed his helmet and activated his suit's breathing system. He crawled out of the pod and looked around. The planet was a nightmare. The ground was covered in strange organic material that pulsed and moved like living flesh. Massive structures rose in the distance, twisted and wrong. The air was thick with toxic fog. And everywhere, he could hear the sounds of void swarm creatures moving and hunting. David checked his weapons. His rifle was damaged, but still functional. His pistol was intact. He had 4 grenades and a combat knife. It would have to be enough. He tried his communication device. Static. The enemy was jamming all signals. He was alone. David took a moment to study his surroundings. According to the mission briefing, the shield generator was located 4 kilometers to the north. He could see the general direction from the landmarks in the distance. The question was whether he could survive long enough to get there. He started walking. The first void creature attacked within minutes. It came out of the fog without warning, a twisted thing of claws and teeth. David shot it 3 times in the head, and it fell at his feet, twitching and dying. More would come. They always did. He kept moving. 2 kilometers into his journey, he heard the sounds of battle. Weapons firing, screams, the distinctive hum of Seraphine psychic attacks. He changed direction and moved toward the noise. He found them in a shallow valley surrounded by void structures. 8 Seraphine warriors were trapped in a circle of enemies. They fought bravely, but they were badly outnumbered. Bodies of their fallen comrades lay scattered around them. Elena Voss stood at the center of the group. Her silver armor was stained with black void blood. Her face was twisted with fear and desperation. For the first time in her long life, she was facing death, and she did not know how to escape it. David assessed the situation. There were at least 50 void creatures surrounding the Seraphini. More were coming from the surrounding area. If he joined the fight, he would probably die with them. He did not hesitate. David moved through the fog like a ghost. He came up behind the void creatures and started killing. His rifle cracked again and again. Creatures fell. He switched to his pistol when the rifle jammed. He killed 3 more. When the pistol was empty, he drew his knife. The void creatures turned to face this new threat. David met them with cold fury. He was not a graceful fighter. He did not have psychic powers or superior strength. But he had something the creatures did not expect. He was not afraid to die. He killed and killed and killed. Void blood splashed across his armor. Claws tore at his suit. Pain exploded through his body as one creature raked across his arm. He ignored it and kept fighting. When it was over, David stood in a circle of dead creatures. His breath came in ragged gasps. Blood dripped from a dozen wounds. But he was still standing. The Seraphine stared at him in shock. Elena stepped forward. Her eyes were wide with something David did not recognize. Surprise? Confusion? Fear? You, she said. How did you? David did not answer. He was already looking north, toward the distant glow of the shield generator. Shield generator is 4 clicks that way, he said. We move now, or we die here. One of the Seraphine warriors snarled at him. It was Kale, the one who had mocked him on the ship. His silver face was twisted with anger. We do not take orders from humans, he said. David looked at him. Just looked. His eyes were empty and cold, like the eyes of a man who had already accepted death. Then stay here and die, David said. I do not care. He turned and started walking north. For a long moment, no one moved. The Seraphine warriors looked at each other. They looked at Elena. They looked at the bodies of their dead comrades and the creatures David had killed to save them. Elena made her decision. Follow him, she ordered. Kale started to protest. Elena silenced him with a look. Follow him, she repeated. That is an order. They followed, and as they walked through the nightmare landscape, the Seraphine warriors began to see the human in a different way. He moved through danger like he belonged there. He spotted threats before they appeared. He killed with an efficiency that made their own skills look clumsy. He was not what they had expected. He was not what they had been taught to believe about humans. He was something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something worthy of respect, even if none of them were ready to admit it yet. The march through enemy territory was brutal. Every step brought new dangers. Every shadow could hide a creature waiting to kill them. The toxic air pressed against their suits, searching for any weakness. The ground itself seemed alive, shifting and moving beneath their feet. David led the way. He did not ask for the position. He simply took it. The Seraphine warriors were too proud to admit they needed him, but they were smart enough to let him go first stop behind him. Elena watched everything he did. She studied his movements, his decisions, his reactions. She was trying to understand him, trying to figure out how this fragile human was doing things that should have been impossible. "He does not move like a human," whispered one of her warriors. His name was Talon, and he was young for a Seraphine. Only 300 years old. "He moves like a predator. He moves like a dead man," Elena replied. "Someone who has already accepted that he will not survive. Such warriors are the most dangerous of all." They had been walking for 2 hours when the first Seraphine fell. A creature burst from the ground and grabbed her before anyone could react. She screamed once, and then she was gone, pulled down into the dark tunnels below. David kept moving. There was nothing he could do for her. There was nothing any of them could do. The second death came an hour later. A warrior named Sarah was hit by a spray of acid from a creature hiding in the organic walls. The acid burned through her armor and into her flesh. She died before she could even fall. David knelt beside her body and closed her eyes. It was a human custom, one the Seraphine did not understand. But none of them stopped him. By the time they reached the halfway point, only 6 Seraphine remained. 6 out of 30. The mission was falling apart. Elena called a halt in a small cave that seemed free of enemies. The survivors were exhausted. Some were wounded. All of them were afraid, though they would never admit it. "We need to rest," Elena said. "Just for a few minutes." David did not argue. He stood at the cave entrance, watching the fog swirl outside. His wounds had been bandaged with emergency supplies, but he was still bleeding. His body was screaming for rest. He ignored it, human. He turned to see Kale approaching. The warrior who had mocked him on the ship looked different now. His arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been shame. "I owe you an apology," Kale said. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. "You saved my life back there. 3 times by my count. I was wrong about you." David looked at him for a long moment. "Thank you. You are not angry?" "Why would I be angry?" Kale did not have an answer. They moved out after 10 minutes. The shield generator was close now. David could see its glow through the fog. Just 2 more kilometers. They could make it. That was when Kale fell. A creature came out of nowhere and drove its claws through his leg. Kale screamed and went down. David was there in an instant, killing the creature with 3 quick shots. But the damage was done. Kale could not walk. Elena looked at her wounded warrior. Her face was hard and cold. "We leave him," she said. The other Seraphine nodded. It was their way. The weak were left behind. Survival of the fittest. They had been doing it for 10,000 years. David did not move. "We are not leaving him," he said. Elena turned to face him. "He cannot walk. He will slow us down. The mission is more important than one life. No, this is not your decision, human. This is Seraphine tradition. The wounded are left behind so the strong can survive." David walked past her and knelt beside Kale. The wounded warrior looked up at him with confusion in his eyes. "What are you doing?" Kale asked. "Getting you home?" David said. He lifted Kale onto his back. The weight was enormous. David's muscles screamed in protest. His wounded arm sent fire shooting through his nerves. But he stood up straight and started walking. Elena grabbed his shoulder. "This is madness. You will kill yourself." David looked at her. His eyes were burning with something fierce and unbreakable. "I do not leave people behind," he said. "That is what makes us human." He turned and walked into the fog, carrying Kale on his back. Elena stood frozen. In all her centuries of life, no one had ever done something so foolish, so irrational. so completely against everything she believed about survival and strength. And yet, as she watched the human struggle forward under his burden, she felt something strange in her chest. Something she had not felt in a very long time. Respect. "Follow him," she ordered her warriors. They did not question her this time. The next 2 kilometers were the longest of David's life. Kale was heavy. The terrain was brutal. Enemies attacked again and again. David fought them off while still carrying the wounded Seraphine. He killed creatures with one hand while holding Kale with the other. His body broke down piece by piece. His legs went numb. His vision blurred. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might explode. But he did not stop. He would not stop. One of the Seraphini warriors fell beside him. Then another. The group grew smaller and smaller. But David kept moving forward. Elena fought at his side now. She was not willing to let him carry this burden alone. She killed everything that came close, giving him room to move, room to breathe. "Why?" she asked him between battles. "Why are you doing this?" "Kale mocked you. We all did. You owe us nothing." David's answer came in gasps. "Because it is right. Because someone has to. Because this is who I am." Elena did not understand. She could not understand. Her entire species was built on the idea that the strong survived and the weak fell behind. What David was doing went against everything she knew, but she could not deny what she was seeing. A human, one of the weakest species in the galaxy, carrying one of her warriors through hell itself. A human who should have died hours ago, still fighting, still moving, still refusing to give up. It was impossible. It was beautiful. They reached the shield generator facility as the last of the light faded from the sky. It was a massive structure, crawling with void creatures. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. David set Kale down gently against a rock. The wounded warrior was unconscious, but still alive. Only 4 Seraphine remained: Elena, Talon, and 2 others. "There are too many," Elena said. "We cannot fight our way through." David looked at the facility. He studied the layout, the positions of the creatures, the location of the main reactor. Then he turned to Elena. "I will go alone," he said. "I will plant the charges while you create a distraction." "That is suicide, probably." Elena stared at him. "You would die for us? For people who treated you like dirt?" David smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. The first real smile any of them had seen from him. "I am not dying for you," he said. "I am dying for the people in that fleet up there. For my friends on the station. For every colony that the Void Swarm will destroy if we fail. I've been living on borrowed time since Kepler 4. Every day since then has been a gift. This is what I was saved for. This is my purpose." He checked his weapons one last time. His rifle, his pistol, his grenades, his knife. "Make sure the fleet knows when those shields drop," he said. "Do not let me die for nothing." He turned and walked toward the facility. "Human," Elena called after him. He stopped but did not turn around. "What is your name?" "Your real name?" "David. David Cole." Elena nodded slowly. "I will remember it." David walked into the darkness, and the fog swallowed him whole. Elena watched him go. Then she turned to her remaining warriors. "We give him time," she said. "We fight until the shields fall or until we die. This is no longer about survival. This is about honor." Talon looked at her with surprise. "You care about a human's honor?" Elena shook her head. "No, I care about earning some of my own. After what I have seen today, I am not sure I ever had any to begin with." She drew her weapon and moved toward the enemy line. It was time to fight. It was time to prove that the Serafini could be more than just ancient traditions and empty pride. It was time to learn what humans had always known, that true strength was not found in power or abilities or long lives. True strength was found in the willingness to sacrifice everything for others, even for those who did not deserve it. David moved through the shield generator facility like a shadow. The corridors were dark and filled with organic growths that pulsed with sickly light. Void creatures wandered the halls, but David avoided them when he could. He killed them silently when he could not. His body was falling apart. Every step sent pain shooting through his legs. His wounded arm hung nearly useless at his side. Blood leaked from a dozen cuts and gashes. A normal human would have collapsed hours ago. But David Cole was not normal. He had stopped being normal on Kepler 4 when he had watched everyone he loved die and discovered that death did not want him. He found the reactor room after 20 minutes of careful movement. It was a massive chamber filled with glowing conduits and strange machinery. At the center was the main reactor, the heart of the planetary shield system. If he could destroy it, the shields would fall and the fleet could bombard the surface. But the reactor was not unguarded. Void Alpha stood before it. The creature was enormous, 3 times the size of a normal void beast. Its body was covered in thick armor plates. Its claws could cut through steel. Its eyes burned with alien intelligence. David had heard about alphas. They were rare but deadly. Elite killers designed to destroy anything that threatened the swarm. Fighting one alone was considered impossible. David did not care about impossible. He stepped into the vauntable chamber. The Alpha turned and saw him. For a moment, the creature seemed surprised. Perhaps it had never seen a human before. Perhaps it had never seen anything so small and fragile walk toward it. Without fear, David raised his rifle and fired. The bullets bounced off the Alpha's armor. The creature roared and charged. What followed was the most brutal fight of David's life. The Alpha was faster than anything that Psi should be. Its claws tore through the air like blades. David dodged and rolled and ducked, avoiding death by inches. He emptied his rifle into the creature's joints. He threw a grenade that exploded against its chest. He stabbed at its eyes with his knife. Nothing worked. The Alpha kept coming, kept attacking, kept trying to kill him. A claw caught his leg and sent him flying across the room. He hit the wall hard and felt something break inside him. Ribs. Maybe more. He coughed blood and forced himself to stand. The Alpha approached slowly now. It knew its prey was finished. It savored the moment. David looked at the creature. He looked at the reactor behind it. He thought about all the people counting on him. Marcus, Admiral Thorne, the fleet waiting in orbit, the colonists who would die if he failed. He thought about Kepler 4, about the 10,000 people who had died while he survived, about the guilt he had carried every day since. Maybe this was his chance to make it right. He reached for his last grenade. The Alpha opened its massive jaws and lunged. David did not try to escape. Instead, he ran forward, directly into the creature's mouth. The jaws closed around him, teeth tearing through his armor, crushing his body. But David's arm was inside the creature's throat, and in his hand was the grenade, pin already pulled. For Kepler, he whispered. The explosion tore the Alpha apart from the inside. David flew through the air and crashed to the ground. He lay there, broken and bleeding, barely alive. But he was not finished yet. He could not be finished yet. He crawled toward the reactor. Every movement was agony. His vision was fading. His body was shutting down. But he kept moving inch by inch, dragging himself across the floor. He reached the reactor controls and pulled himself up. His fingers, slick with blood, found the detonation system he had brought with him. He attached the charges with hands that would barely obey him. The timer was set for 30 seconds. It was done. David collapsed against the reactor. He did not have the strength to move anymore. He did not have the strength to escape. But that was okay. He had known this would be a one-way trip. He closed his eyes and waited for the end. The charges exploded. The reactor went critical, and the planetary shields fell. Outside the facility, Elena saw the flash of light and felt the psychic pulse of the shield collapse. Above them, the sky lit up as the coalition fleet began its bombardment. Massive energy beams struck the planet's surface, destroying void structures and creatures by the thousands. "He did it," Talon said in disbelief. "The human actually did it." Elena did not celebrate. She was already running toward the facility. "Come on," she shouted. "We have to find him." They fought their way through the chaos. The bombardment was creating earthquakes and explosions everywhere. Void creatures fled in all directions, their hive mind shattered by the destruction of their base. Elena found David in the wreckage of the reactor room. He was lying in a pool of blood, surrounded by the scattered remains of the Alpha he had killed. His body was broken. His armor was torn apart. He looked dead, but when Elena knelt beside him and touched his face, his eyes opened. "Shields?" he whispered. "Down," Elena said. "The fleet is destroying everything." "You did it, David. You saved us all." David smiled weakly. "Good." His eyes started to close. "No," Elena said fiercely. "You do not die here. Not after everything you have done. Not today." She lifted him in her arms, careful of his wounds. He weighed almost nothing. How could someone so small have done so much? "Evacuation shuttle is 3 minutes out," Talon reported. "They're coming for us. Then we keep him alive for 3 minutes. Elena said they did. The next 3 weeks were a blur for David. He drifted in and out of consciousness in the medical bay of Harmony Prime. Doctors worked around the clock to repair his broken body. He had 17 fractured bones, severe internal bleeding, and wounds that should have killed him 10 times over, but he survived. Because that was what he did. He survived when others fell. When he finally woke for good, Marcus was sitting beside his bed. "You look terrible," Marcus said with a grin. "Feel terrible," David replied. "You are a hero now, you know. Everyone is talking about you. The human who single-handedly destroyed the shield generator. The human who killed a Void Alpha with a grenade in its mouth. You are famous." David closed his eyes. "I do not want to be famous." "Too bad. You do not get to choose." A knock came at the door. Marcus stood up. "You have a visitor," he said. "I will give you some privacy." He left, and Elena Voss entered. She looked different than before. Her arrogance was gone. Her cold pride had melted away. She walked toward David's bed slowly, as if approaching something sacred. For a long moment, she said nothing. She just looked at him, this fragile human who had done impossible things. Then, slowly, she knelt. David's eyes widened. He knew what this meant. The kneeling gesture was the highest honor a Seraphini warrior could give. It was reserved for legendary heroes, beings of incredible power and courage. No Seraphine had given it to an outsider in thousands of years. "I was wrong about your kind," Elena said. Her voice was soft but steady. "I mistook your silence for weakness. I thought you ran from my words because you were afraid. But I understand now. You did not respond because words meant nothing to you. Only actions. Only sacrifice. Only the willingness to die for others." She looked up at him, and there were tears in her pale blue eyes. "You carried Kale when you could barely stand. You went into that facility knowing you would not come out. You killed an Alpha with your dying breath. And you did all of this for people who mocked you, who insulted you, who thought you were nothing." She shook her head slowly. In 10,000 years, I have never seen such strength, such courage, such honor. You have taught me more about being a true warrior than all the battles I have ever fought. David looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was quiet but strong. Humanity learned long ago that the loudest voice in the room is rarely the strongest. We survived not because we were the biggest, or the fastest, or the most powerful. We survived because we never gave up. Not ever. We survived because we stood together, protected each other, fought for each other, even when it cost us everything. He reached out and touched her shoulder. You are not our enemy, Elena. None of your people are. We are all in this together. And together, we are stronger than any void swarm. Elena nodded slowly. Then she stood and bowed her head. I will not forget this, David Cole, and neither will my people. You have my word. She left without another word. 3 months later, a new batch of alien warriors arrived at Harmony Prime for training. They came from many species, all eager to prove themselves against the void swarm. One of them, a young warrior from a species that looked down on humans, saw a human soldier in the training room. He laughed and made a cruel joke about human weakness. Before anyone could react, Elena Voss stepped forward. Her face was cold as winter ice. That human species, she said, taught me more about true strength in one battle than my people learned in 10,000 years. Speak against them again, and you answer to me. The young warrior shrank back, terrified. Across the room, David Cole watched silently. He was still recovering from his wounds. He would carry scars for the rest of his life. But he was alive, and he had proven something that words could never prove. Humanity belonged among the stars, not because they were strong, not because they were powerful, not because they had ancient traditions or psychic abilities, but because they never gave up, because they always stood together, because they would sacrifice everything for each other, and because sometimes the quietest voice in the room was the one that said the most. David smiled.